Spider-Man just got some new wild powers from none other than the Sorcerer Supreme, Dr. Doom. This story comes straight from the 8 Deaths of Spider-Man, primarily written by Joe Kelly and Justina Ireland. We've covered the full saga, spanning 12 issues, including 2 special tie-ins. Now, most of the story has been covered by me, Dezzy, but the first part, that was handled by my channel partner, GoofyRhexxi. And trust me, things are about to get crazy, because Spider-Man is about to go toe-to-toe with the children of Cedarak. Welcome back to Keeping It Comic, and let's dive into it.
So where this picks up here is that after Spider-Man had just saved a civilian and got up against some villain who called himself Burnout, Dr. Doom shows up. Now, just for some quick catch up here, some context. Now, during the Marvel Blood Hunt series here, Doom had tricked Doctor Strange into giving him the mantle of Sorcerer Supreme. Now, Strange wanted Dr. Doom to help here with bringing back the sun after it had been covered up here by the Dark Force by Varney, the first vampire, who was using Blade's body. The deal was that he was supposed to give back the mantle after he had brought back the sun and removed the Dark Force here. But everybody and their mama knew that Doom was not going to do that. So he kept the mantle, and from my recollection, we have only seen him once, which was when he showed up to the Avengers, questioning them about why they're such terrible heroes and have not established their dominance here on Earth. So now this is the second time that he showed up since then, and right here he appears to Spider-Man as the Sorcerer Supreme. And he let Spider-Man know that he has chosen him for a matter of importance, something that Spider-Man is uniquely suited for. So naturally, Spider-Man says no, because listen, no one trusts Doom, right? Even when they need Doom, which is often, they still do not trust Doom. So Spider-Man even calls him, which is messed up here, a Timu Doctor Strange knockoff, which is hella disrespectful, but funny as heck, which of course pisses off Doom, but then he just disappears. To which Spider-Man and myself is like, this is shocking, right? But before he left, he says to Spider-Man, then the covenant shall be broken. So Spidey is left to think, like, yo, what covenant is this dude talking about? So later on, we see him doing some training with Spider-Boy. And while in the middle of training, they both hear a loud boom. So Spidey tells Spider-Boy, he's like, yo, this is a level 8 on the spider scale, so I'm gonna have to handle this one alone. Now, when we get there, we see this person, this creature, and he says, by the will of my father, the immovable, the unstoppable, I declare this contest begun, and how Centrals will not be denied. And around him, you can see these like different objects that are floating in suspense in this yellow looking wave. So then he whacks the ground, causing some rubble to fly up. And then once again, we see that yellow looking wave again. So he says, where is Earth champion? Like he's calling out, like, where is Earth's champion? And right on cue, Spider-Man ends up webbing him in the face and then follows up with a kick to the dome, which causes Spider-Man a little bit of pain because he's like, ow. And this is when we find out that his body, well, at least his face, has some kind of armor on it. Then the red guy says, begone, fleck of spittle, matters that shake the heavens are beyond you. The covenant is begun. Earth's champion will face me, or... Now, Spider-Man realizes that what this guy's abilities are right now. He starts talking about a wave of power and how it seems like he's manipulating gravity. But then Spider-Man realizes that dude just also said the word covenant, the same thing that Doom had said earlier. So Red Dude continues to use his gravity powers. Spider-Man mentions how he is moving in concentric circles. He gets hit by one of the waves, which then lands him up against the wall. So then Doom pops up and he's going to finally make sense of this whole thing. Like, what is Central's talking about here? What is this covenant? But first he says to Spidey, this is the task that you were gifted. And then he continues to say, any who perish fall victim to your negligence, meaning Spider-Man's negligence. accept my task and receive my aid. So then Spider-Man in a panic is like, yes, I accept. So Doom is like, of course you do, because Doom wills it. And next, pay attention. So here is where he explains what is happening here. Now he begins to say here, he's like, from the Darkhold Chronicles, Age of Strange, the young Sorcerer Supreme explored the lengths and depths of his magnificence. And while their potential inspired awe, he quickly discovered the limits of his human power. And in order to guard the Earth and its environs from the countless threats of the immaterial cosmos, he would require aid. Bargains would be struck. Doom would never have required such unreliable and inefficient systems, but we play the hands that we are dealt. And he says, while studying the eldritch histories of the Darkhold, Strange discovered the unassailable crimson casket of Cyttorak. Now, Cyttorak here, who's also known as a destroyer, he's Lord of the Oblivion here, and he's the master of the Raging Storm. Now, he's an incredibly powerful extra-dimensional being. Now, after he was worshipped as a god and as a demon here, he was later on then banished to his home dimension. And to continue like his power and his dominance here, he would select an avatar and enhance them, one of which we know is the unstoppable Juggernaut. So then Doom continues, he's like, ample protection for Earth for this dimension. However, the Crimson God Cyttorak is generally immovable in body and mind, as is well known. Strange, nothing if not clever, entered into a parlay with the god in order to sway him toward a pact. Eventually, a covenant was forged, but Strange quickly learned that cleverness and intelligence are not the same. So in exchange for erecting the casket and protecting Earthrealm, Strange had to commit to besting the 8 scions of Cyttorak, the restless, spoiled, terrible godlings eager to prove themselves worthy of their father's throne. So Strange thought it a fair bargain because he believed he found a loophole in their cosmic contract. There was one rivalry that precedes the all birth, Cyttorak and Ragador. Now, I won't get too much into Ragador here, but what's important is that Strange armed himself with the sacred reeds of Ragador, which all but assured that should he fall at the hands of the Crimson Scions, he would be reborn and thusly never lose. And then he continues to mention that the Covenant demands that at the top of the Crimson calendar, Earth put forward a champion to battle the Scions for Cyttorak's amusement. The contests were taxing to say the least. And now Strange, ever the martyr, chose to face the Scions himself. His inefficiencies also know no bounds, as Doom says. Yet he prevailed. Every time the Covenant was invoked, Strange answered and paid the mighty toll to maintain the casket every single time. There is little I admire about Strange, he says, but his tenacity cannot go unrecognized. But my time is far more valuable, which is the reason why Doom is like, I'm not doing this thing. Thus, the need has arisen for a different champion, someone clever and tenacious who was willing to put the needs of others above their own, someone familiar with pain. And we know that Spider-Man Peter Parker, this dude knows way too much about pain. So now for Spider-Man, Doom has given him the mantle as the new champion in the Covenant of Cyttorak. So now Spidey, he has to face all the Scions, but he also has some new trinkets at his disposal as well. Doom gives him the arcane armor, which now gives Spider-Man the access to the mystic arts and of course the physical protection as well. He also now has, just like Strange did, the 8 lives, the reeds of Ragador. Now Spidey's first move here is the wicked webs of Wungador, which I gotta be honest with you here. Shout out to Cinchos for calling this out here because he was thinking the exact same thing that I was thinking. He's like, yo, we usually do not call out our spells. So, and then Cinchos goes on to explain, he's like, how he is the first of the Scions of Cyttorak here, imbued with undeniable and inevitable attraction. He is the will that shapes the dance of planets, stars, and galaxies. And he continues to talk while Spidey recognizes a weakness that he has, the source of his power, a black heart hole. Now, because of his suit, he was able to see what he could use to counter this. He tells us that the name of this here is Luminescence of Limitless Langolin. I hope I said that right. My bad, y'all, if I didn't. Which he says can fill the black hole, overload it, and destroy it as well. Now, Spidey's all cocky about this, right? He's like, I normally wouldn't be so cavalier about this, but I know that the reeds will protect me, talking about the reeds of Ragnarok here. And Doom didn't lie about that, and he was like, hey, I win. But then ish gets real, because next we see cause of death. Scientific term, spaghettification, a term that, of course, that we've heard here in the MCU. So now hearing it in the comics is actually kind of cool. Now, this is not Spidey talking right now. It's another voice, and he explains how it's one of the most excruciating deaths in the universe. A body being stretched and compressed as it's pulled into the gravity well of a black hole. He continues to explain that the time between the first rending of the toe flesh and the last compression of the scalp atoms only takes picoseconds, but for the deceased, the process feels like it takes about 96 hours. And listen, this thing sounds absolutely terrible, just like how it looks when you're going through this page. Now, something else interesting happens here. The person that was processing his death was Phil Coulson, who, if you've not been following the most recent Infinity Watch story, it's a good read, but it's not like a major important story. But in that one, Phil Coulson has now become the new embodiment of death and is supposed to guide folks here to the afterlife. Now, Phil was all shocked to see that it was Spider-Man, but before he could get any too acquainted with him, Phil realizes that Spidey has the reeds, referring, of course, again to the reeds of Ragnarok. And this was kind of funny here because Reed is like, I'm so sorry, stay strong, because he knows that this is going to happen again and again and again. So then later on, we see Spidey being put back together. He is reliving his birth all over again. He states how it hurts so much to even think about it. His body is torn and broken, rent at an atomic level. The reeds reverse the natural order and forces the atoms back to reform his muscles, reknit his souls. Here he learns that nothing in magic comes without a cost, which is, I thought it was something that he already knew already. The cost of defying the very foundation of a mortal existence, which is pain, inconceivable pain. The only thing that Spider-Man can say in this moment, and I feel so bad for him, is God. He's like, oh my God, help me, help. And then a voice says to him here, he's like, I've never been accused of having a good bedside manner. And then he says, do people want the good news or the bad news first? So then Spidey, he lets us know, he's like, Doctor Strange? Well, good, please, good. And then we see Doctor Strange here in his astral form. And then Doctor Strange tells him, he's like, you're alive and in perfect health. Bad news is you have to fight and defeat the rest of the Scions of Sidorak, likely dying in the process, rebirthing 7 more times. If you don't, the earth falls.
Never did I think I'd see Spider-Man, Black Cat, and Doctor Strange performing a B&E at the Sanctum. And man, the pressure is on Spidey right now. As they're talking about an escape plan, Doctor Strange says, a plan? Yes. Execution? And Spider-Man responds, implementation, staging, completion, so many other words, Doc. And honestly, he's got a point. After already dying once, who wants to hear about execution? But here's the thing. Spider-Man's getting better with this magic stuff. He creates a window out of nowhere while falling and even yells out, wonderful window smasher of Wahoo. And I'm glad Doctor Strange said exactly what I was thinking. That isn't a spell. I mean, seriously, what is Spider-Man even looking at while Black Cat is midair? But hey, let's keep it PG. This is a kid-friendly channel. Now, why are they breaking into the Sanctum? Well, it's for a spell book. And let me just tell you, the dialogue between these three is pure comedy. Spider-Man's like, maybe I'm not ready for this magic book. And Felicia asks, was that the obsidian obelisk of Obvious? And even Doctor Strange had to step in and say, not helping Felicia. And once again, Peter Parker proves he is totally oblivious when it comes to women. Right before Black Cat leaves, she says, "I hope you'll pick up the phone once in a while when you're not in a crisis." Spider-Man responds, "I do, don't I?" And Felicia, being blunt as always, says, "Did you know I'm single again?" And Spider-Man, with zero awareness, says, "No, I'm sorry. Hey, there are some amazing dating apps." I'm starting to think Spider-Man's true weakness is flirting. Later on, Peter goes home and dives deeper into the magic book when he gets a surprise visit from Norman Osborn. Now, I'm going to shorten this conversation because honestly, it doesn't have much to do with the story. All you need to know is Oscorp is shutting down. But that's not really what's important. The important part happens when Peter goes to leave. And as he walks through the door, it's not a hallway on the other side. Instead, he finds himself in full Spider-Man gear facing a Scion. For those who aren't familiar with the Scions, here's a quick rundown. They're from the Crimson Cosmos, and they have to do these challenges with Earth's champion in hopes of winning to take over the Earth. The one playing the games, well, they're the kids of Sidorak. You know, the same entity who gave some of his powers to create Juggernaut. And let me tell you, one of them is so bad, she got me wondering how we can get her to join the good side. I mean, she's better than my Wi-Fi connection on a stormy night. But the one standing before Spider-Man is Cyberon. And I might be saying that wrong, but I'm gonna go with it for now. And it seems all Spider-Man has to do to win this game is land one strike on him. Spider-Man catches on to the disappearing door and says, "Teleporting space beetle. We're doing magic tag? Got it." And yeah, this guy does look like a beetle with a scythe. And Spider-Man, being in a rush, immediately starts throwing punches with a magical spell called the Benevolent Battling of Belderan. Cyberon, unimpressed, says, "My brother said you call out your spells. Cute." Now, Spider-Man's already at a disadvantage because he's in the middle of a baseball field, so he can't really use his webs. He jumps at Cyberon and gets teleported behind him. We then find out that Cyberon's power is infinite space. To make matters worse, it seems that he can send Spider-Man into different versions of space, causing him excruciating pain every time he teleports. But remember, Spider-Man's been studying that magical book, and it starts to pay off here. He casts a spell, Tenacious Threads of the Tatarum, which creates a thread that binds the caster and the target together. With this spell, Spider-Man traps both of them in a giant spiderweb dome. Unfortunately, Doctor Strange had used this spell before, and Cyberon is prepared. If he can't go up, he's gonna go down. Cyberon shrinks them both to the size of a bug, and then the size of electrons. But thankfully, Spider-Man knows a thing or two about the Quantumverse. He remembers a physics theory that says you can only shrink so small before you return to the same spot and the same size. And just like that, we have a galactic-sized Spider-Man who ends up squashing Cyberon and himself with a giant pointer finger. And just like that, Peter is revived again, this time at a restaurant. Now, let's be honest, we don't care about the boring dinner conversation. What we care about is what happens next. Another Scion appears, and oh man, is she freaky looking. Now, this new Scion freezes time for everyone in the restaurant, then uses the same spell Peter used on the last Scion to latch herself to him and drag him through a portal. Her name is Cyrios. And I might be saying that wrong, but until Marvel tells us how to say these, we're gonna go with it. And it seems she controls time. And where does she take Peter? His old home. And while she's riding his old bike at that. But she didn't just take him to any point in time. She took him to the night Uncle Ben was killed. And no matter how hard Peter tries, he can't move too far due to the spell that she casted. And Cyrios tells him, "We're going to visit the pain in your lifetime." And there's a lot of it. So how does Peter win this contest? He has to surprise her. And of course, every time traveling portal hurts. Where do they end up next? At the exact moment when the Green Goblin killed Gwen Stacy. Time traveling has changed Cyrios' appearance, but Spider-Man is not happy about this and tries to throw a punch. And suddenly, they're inside the bell tower. The same one where Peter got rid of the Venom symbiote. And just like that, they jump a few minutes forward in time, where we see Eddie Brock first being taken over by the Venom symbiote. Peter's fully focused now, and he throws another punch. Once again, he misses, and they jump to another point in time, and another, and another. Every time Peter swings at her, he ends up at a different moment in his life. Finally, Peter gives up swinging and starts using his brain. He realizes that if Sirios can control time, she must know how all this ends. So Peter says, "Show me." And Sirios does just that, opening a portal. And out comes another Spider-Man who punches her right in the face. How is it possible? It turns out that Peter created a device that detects when this specific future jump would happen. And the Spider-Man from the future? Well, of course he knew that exactly because he's the future Spider-Man. Needless to say, Spider-Man surprised Sirius, winning the contest. And can I just say, Scions are sore losers. Because after losing, Sirius splits Peter's consciousness into every moment in his life at the same time. Birth, death, and all the agony in between. And just like that, Peter dies again. But of course, he's revived once more. So what does he decide to do to clear his head after all this? He goes and meets with Black Cat. And he even apologizes to her for not realizing she was single. But you know what they say about a woman's intuition, right? Black Cat says, "Let me guess, you died again and it gave you a new perspective on things." She gives Peter some advice before leaving and says he needs to find what brings him joy. The next day, Peter decides to go on a picnic date with his girlfriend Shay. And who do we see watching these two lovebirds? The lovely Syra and her brother Calix. Just two Scions sitting on the park bench investigating Peter. And I don't know about you guys, but I can't wait to see what these two are gonna do next. So look, we finally got some answers on how Spider-Man was able to punch the time-traveling Scion in the last issue. It seems Doctor Strange taught Peter a spell to put into a device that would tell him exactly when and where to be. And just to be on the safe side, Peter also put a timer inside of it too. So if one fails, the other is bound to work. Clearly, Doctor Strange must be traveling through time to assist because Peter had already known the plan was going to work. I'm a little curious too about how much Doctor Strange can intervene when he said in the last issue that intervening was against the rules. But we can see Peter is tired of dying. So of course, he asks the one person who would be able to answer the question the most. How does he stop dying? And Doctor Strange simply says, "You don't." And I mean, I clearly get why Peter's annoyed. He's defeated 3 of these Scions so far, and yet they keep killing him every single time. Now this is where things get a little interesting, because Doctor Strange says if the Covenant fails, the pain will be inconsequential compared to everything else. I've told you as well, the Covenant is what holds together the casket. And Peter has the same question I think we all have. What is the casket, and what is it holding back? And I think it's really suspicious that Doctor Strange won't answer these questions. What exactly is he hiding? So a little later in the day, we have Peter and his agent Randy at an art gallery, looking at some photos of Spider-Man in action. And I have to say, the most suspicious old man I've ever seen is glaring into the window. And even though they say that this guy is Alice's dad, something about the way he was looking in the window just doesn't sit right with me. And I think we're going to see that in a later issue. Now, while all this is going on, we have the 2 Scion twins who were watching Peter in the last issue still watching him. Calix is getting impatient and tells his sister he's going to challenge Spider-Man. Now, it seems the male testosterone even runs through Scion blood because boy, this man is over the top. All he wants to do is battle now and win it because it's a chance for glory. And all he wants to do is please his father. Talk about daddy issues. But it seems his sister is a little more level-headed. She even tells him, "You seem to be ignoring the fact that this new champion has already defeated 3 of our siblings. We're strategically more likely to lose." And how does he respond to that? By saying, "I've had enough of your silliness. I will defeat the new challenger And then Father will see I'm the best among us. Now, while this is all going on, this whole time, Peter has been on an extreme edge, just waiting for the next challenge to happen. The whole time at the art gallery, he was on edge. Now, he's at community day, which is being run by his aunt, and this man is still on edge. She asks him if he's coming over for dinner, and he's in left field. It's not too many times you see Peter ready to go like this. And as the two scions watch Peter walk away, Calix is criticizing Peter for being a hopeless fool while feeding two of the ugliest looking pets I've ever seen in my life. And just when you think Peter is gone, Spider-Man gets the drop on both of the scions and say, I'm ready. Let me guess. You're the next scion. You represent the inevitability of a-holes. And I gotta say, our boy Spidey is so anxious to get this fight going that our man spun the block, pulled up on his enemies, and said, let's do this right now. I'm not waiting. So Calix is like, you're bold, confronting me before I've challenged you. This just keeps getting better. You rush to your death. I'll be happy to oblige you when I decide it's time. And Spider-Man's response is just as smart as you would expect it to be coming from Spider-Man. He says, wow, that's real neighborly of you. So what does Spider-Man decide to do? Better yet, I'm gonna tell you exactly what he said. How about this then? I challenge you right here, right now. Calix's response? What? No, you can't do that. That's not how this works. I have to issue a formal challenge. And I don't know whose side this gorgeous scion is on, but she chimes in and says, actually, brother, he can. It's merely a tradition that we issue the challenge first. So of course, Spider-Man is like, wait, I have to fight both of you at once? And she says, no, I am slightly younger than my twin. I would challenge you after he loses. Talk about no faith in your siblings. She said this man already lost before the challenge even started. And seeing how stuck up Calix seems to be, he says, I am the fourth scion, the inevitability of pain, and I accept your challenge. Of course, you will have to decide whether or not to allow my crimson canines to unleash agony as you try to defeat me. And just like that, those two ugly hounds go jumping right off the roof. So one of the canines is running down the street and the little girl says, doggy. And the mother seems like she can't see it at all. I don't know what this thing did, but it looks like it's pulling her life right out of her. And the mother goes unconscious. Spider-Man, quick on his feet, jumps into action and casts a spell, Bomb of Bathsheba. And just like that, the mother woke up and was in a daze. And just then, Spider-Man's spider sense goes off and he gets smacked with a whip. Now, once again, I have to question Doctor Strange about how much he's hiding because Calix says, fascinating. You seem to actually care about these people much more than your predecessor did, I think. So was Doctor Strange just letting people have their life sucked out of them by these hounds while fighting in the past? Because now I'm starting to think a lot of people died because of Doctor Strange. And while this is all going on, the hounds are still running around. And it seems they haven't affected anyone else yet. But Spider-Man has just a trick for that. Spider-Man uses a spell, Binding of Arceus. And just like that, both hounds are entangled in a magical spell. Calix is like, do you really think a simple binding will stop my hounds? And Spider-Man responds, no, not really. But sending them back to wherever they came from should. And as we see the two hounds start to, sort of decay, Calix says, that was not the binding of Arceus. And this man, Spider-Man, had me on the floor rolling because he said, nope, Arceus is a Pokemon. Like, for real? This man really tricked a scion with a Pokemon name. And in the mix of all this, he got a clean hit as well. But it seems our boy Spidey has been getting better in practicing his spells because he says that was actually the unraveling of Urarol. Someone told me only amateurs call out their spells. So not only did he not call out the spell, he called out the wrong spell and still performed the right spell at the same time. Spider-Man is like, so are we done here or what? And of course, you know these scions. Calix says, fool, I will never yield to you. And I swear, I felt it when Spider-Man said, suit yourself, because the next thing you know, Spider-Man is throwing punches and kicks everywhere. For a moment, I felt like I was playing Marvel vs. Capcom and just performed the maximum spider finisher. I mean, if you look close enough, you can see the horns are going opposite directions of the body. This definitely turned into a one-sided fight at this point. Even Spider-Man said, "Look, would you just yield? This is embarrassing. I'm embarrassed for you, and I'm a guy who knows what it's like to take a beat down." And yet, this man still did not want to give up. It wasn't until his sister got involved and said, "Enough. You cannot continue. It is my turn." Then he decided to admit defeat. And at this moment, one thing pops into Spider-Man's head. He thinks to himself, Strange was wrong. I defeated a Scion and didn't die an excruciating death in the process. But it definitely makes me wonder, if he wins this next fight, will he have to die twice? But either way, Kyra not only ended the challenge with her brother, but now she has stepped up to the plate and says she is ready to challenge Spider-Man. Spider-Man says, "Okay, show me what you got." To which Kyra responds, "What I've got the inevitability of death." So what's the first thing out of her mouth? She says, "To be clear, this is a waste of time," and that the Covenant is nothing more than echoes of two egos. She thinks it's stupid and she hates it. Already, she seems different and more sensible than her relatives. She even apologizes to Spidey for their conflict. He says, "You can always quit, because based on the beating I handed your brother, defeat is inevitable too." This fool on the ground claiming, "I have not conceded yet. Even now, I plot my second wave of attack." Now, this poor woman doesn't even want to be there fighting. She wants to be in her chambers with some red wine and a bath. Now, her brother went to say something, and both of them went in on him. Spidey said, "Shut it, tinfoil Loki." And she said, "Silence, scion of," I'll say dog poop for the channel's sake. Even Cyrus said, "Tinfoil Loki was a worthy jab." And like that, it's time for the next challenge. Spider-Man gets ready to cast some spells, but is interrupted. Syra tells him it's not that kind of challenge. All he has to do is hold a sphere until he can no longer bear it. And if he sets it down, he loses. Spidey is cautious and asks, "What does the spear do?" In which she says, "The spear shows only the truth." So how does Spidey win? He just has to hold the spear until it has nothing more to show him. And what's the first thing he sees? Aunt May in the hospital at 79 years old, dealing with cancer, and worse, it seems that a virus has gone out this year that killed over 3 million people. And due to the cancer, she's more susceptible to catching it. It seems her lungs will not absorb oxygen, and the only remaining course of action is to put her in a induced coma. And as they honor her last wishes and move her to triage, she starts to drift into an endless sleep, wishing she could have kissed Peter. And talk about deep. But Peter shrugs it off. He says, "I suffered more losses than you know, lady. I can watch movies about my life." The next thing you know, we see Hobgoblin attacking Spider-Man and Mary J. Jackpot. I don't think anyone's happy about that, but I'm gonna move on. And while this is going on, Peter has to listen to her hard past about the broken home she grew up in and the abusive father, how she was a young woman being abused by other men, and even how she fell in love with her family friend but lost him. And just then, a spear goes right through her chest. And if you haven't noticed, that same shadow figure we seen in the last image behind Aunt May is approaching. And at this point, Peter was like, "I get this game. Who can get bored first? Cool, I'm winning. The future isn't written." Syra agrees, but she also says, nevertheless, at some point, her life will end. So who do we see next? John Jameson, who dies in his chair and is replaced within a week. And we can finally see that the shadow figure is none other than Agent Coulson, who seems to be taking everybody. But then we see Sher Markin, who dies in a car accident when a drunk driver crosses the median, and strikes her vehicle at 100 miles an hour. And Randolph Robertson, who was an activist for the oppressed since high school and had his spinal cord broken at what was supposed to be a peaceful rally. Felicia, whose luck ran out and she fell to her death. Elizabeth Brandt, who died fearing that her family she kept together would fall apart after her death. Norman Osborn, who died in some type of experiment or test. And then we get the big one. We see none other than Spider-Boy, Ghost Spider, and Spin all dead. So what exactly is the significance of all this? Humans are full of potential and promise and love and fear and confusion one moment, and empty shells of meat the next. And that final vision is what broke Spider-Man. They're just kids, he says. But he gets reminded that human children die too, even brave ones. Coulson says, Miles, I'm sorry, but it's time. Spider-Man is somehow able to grab him, probably due to his ability to use magic now. Coulson phases right through him and continues his mission. He begs Coulson. And then you see, Peter watches everyone, friends, strangers, young, old, even gods and superhumans all perishing. And I think I speak for everyone when I say, we already feel bad for Peter Parker, but this is next level. And we're left seeing a Peter who's crying, but still holding the sphere. Cyrus says again, how much she hates all this, and crack. Silas jumped at the chance while Peter was distracted. Cyrus tells him it's not his time and to stop, but Silas isn't paying attention at all. He says, I will tell father of your assistance, but he will know who killed the champion. The whole time whipping Peter while falling from the roof. I mean, this man is going crazy whipping Peter, all while grinning with a missing tooth. Even his sister looks concerned. We snap to a conversation between Spider-Man and Coulson where he asks, how many did you get through? And Peter responds, 171,963. Talk about chaos. Coulson warns Spider-Man that there's 3 Scions remaining and they're worse than what he already faced. And Spidey just walks off. Now, Peter is beyond feeling the effects of this last trial. He's talking to Doctor Strange, who is telling him that he needs to redouble his efforts for the future challenges. And Peter's like, why? Why do I have to do it? Any of it? Doctor Strange says, but you know that people die. You're not naive. It's what we are. And Peter says, and what we are is meaningless. Strange says, I'm sorry you was pulled into any of this. And Peter says, I'm sorry too, Doc. I quit. Strange, he tries to plead one last time by saying you can't quit. The covenant must be upheld or the world falls. And Peter simply says, let it fall. I don't care. All right, so Spider-Man is still deep in his feelings after the last trial with the Scions. He's seriously thinking about hanging up his Spidey suit and just living as Peter Parker. After seeing 3 million visions of countless people dying, he feels like there's no hope left for humanity. But the Scions, they're not done yet, and neither is the threat. If Spider-Man won't rise to the occasion, someone else has to. And who is that someone? The X-Men. That's right, folks. The X-Men are now stepping up to defend the planet. Now, we know they're not the Earth's champions, but let me tell you, watching them take on the Scions is nothing short of exciting. Meanwhile, Peter Parker's out here trying to get a rebound. And Doctor Strange, he's fed up with it all. Oh, and that fine-ass Scion still has her eyes on Peter. Welcome back to Keepin' It Comic. And today, we're diving back into the 8 deaths of Spider-Man. Now, Syra and Doctor Strange have been watching Peter since the last trial. She is confused on what Peter is doing, as she knows he should still be doing his trials. Doctor Strange states he quit, which is normal for him. Which, let's be real, we all know this is kind of Peter's thing. Doctor Strange is even more confused, though, on why she is still following Peter even though her challenge is over. In which she even responds, she doesn't care about the challenge anymore. She doesn't understand why she cares for him. But at the same time, in Alaska at the X-Men headquarters, Juggernaut is going through it. He says, gotta go. Get going. Soon. Soon now. Scott asks, is everything okay? In which Juggernaut responds, no. Sidorak, Scions, Champion, Cyclops, Psylocke, we gotta get to New York now. The world, everyone is in danger. And you can tell, we still have that arrogant Scott on our hands because he responds with, we should get to New York. He can't be serious. Thankfully, Psylocke is there to talk some sense into him and says, he is, and he never suggests a mission. Now, for those who don't know about Juggernaut, Cain Marko, the stepbrother of Charles Xavier, doesn't get his powers from mutation. Instead, they come from the Crimson Gem of Sidorak, which he discovers while serving as a soldier in X-Men issue number 12, 1965. While in a hidden temple, Cain touches the gem and is transformed into Sidorak's avatar, gaining immense strength. And this is why he's probably able to sense what's going on. But hold on, because things are getting even crazier in the Crimson Chaos. Calyx, the sore loser who took a one-sided beating from Spider-Man, is still furious that he lost. And I mean, the way that beating was going, I can kind of understand. So what does he do? He decides to go beyond the casket that we keep hearing about from Doctor Strange. And we finally learn what is there, the Blight. Calyx says, show me what there is to fear. Show me why my father cowers at the mere mention of your existence. Just as I thought. Another one of his pointless rules. There was nothing here. And just then, tentacle-looking things come out of nowhere. And he says, what is this? I can't move. We must turn back. And after fighting his way through the Blight, he says, so this is what he fears. The loss of control, the fading of power. But I faced the Blight and I survived. And I mean, for real? You survived, homie? You went a small portion of the way in and ran back. And now you want to say you feel stronger than ever. But okay, now at the same time, there's another Scion loose in New York City. He says, it is I, Kratios. Prepare to meet your end, you miserable human. And even he is beyond confused as he looks at an elderly woman with the most confusing face saying, where is he? And might I add, why does he look like a Jamaican Red Hulk? And just as he says, a victory without battle is a hollow one, will no one fight? He gets exactly what he's looking for as Juggernaut says, we will. The X-Men accept your challenge. And where's Peter Parker during all this? Well, I'll give you the short version. Peter Parker's girlfriend has left him, and now he's looking for a rebound. And whose house did he go to? None other than Felicia, aka Black Cat. And I will leave you to figure out what exactly happened after a makeout session in public, and then she invites him inside. Now, Peter wakes up the next day and he's like, thanks, look, about last night. And Felicia says, yeah, I have to head out. You can lock up when you go. And he's like, sure, and thanks for letting me crash here. And she hits him with the crucial, that's what friends do, Peter. Now, Peter says to himself, as she leaves me alone in the quiet, I hear a buzz, the tingle of magic. One of Sidorak's Scions has come to New York. I try to care. It doesn't work. Meanwhile, Kratios is still fighting the X-Men. He says, do you fools really think you can defeat me so easily? And Scott shows exactly why he's the leader. He gets right into action. He says, we need to limit his movement so we can keep this fight contained. That's you on a psychic front, Kid Omega. Temper, can you ice the roads so it's difficult to find purchase? And just then, you got cars flying in the air, ice everywhere, bystanders looking, magic coming out of portals, and Psylocke just looking badass as always. Kratios is like, none of you are champions, thus you have no chance. And of course, Psylocke isn't hearing that, because as she stabs him right in the head, she says, yes, keep talking, you ridiculous fool. But Kratios isn't hearing that. He says, stop annoying me while I destroy your world. And Scott's response? Yeah, no, we're just getting started. And Kratios says, how amusing. Humans are weak, next to the might of Sidorak and his ilk. And Juggernaut says, oh yeah? Do I count as one of his ilk? And he kicks him right in the chest, stomps him in the face as he hits the ground. And the whole time, Cyttorak's looking aggravated as hell. And a mysterious scion in a hood says, Earth's champion did not show. Will you declare the covenant nullified, father? Or will you let them fight? And Cyttorak says, who are you to challenge your betters? And at the same time, Kratios and Juggernaut are going to town, literally. Kratios says, the crumbs of my father's power that you possess does not make us kin. In the midst of all this, the whole city is being destroyed. And it is crazy. You have people running for safety. You have these two duking it out at a kid's birthday party. Kid Omega's like, bounce houses are for babies. Who wants to fly? And we have Temper making an ice wall trying to protect people. And we have Kratios over here uppercutting Juggernaut while saying, you were no son of Cyttorak. You are no champion. And I mean, this man is getting demolished. You have Juggernaut punching him, Cyclops beaming him, Psylocke stabbing him, and Magic slicing him. And all the while, well, Peter's at home on the couch. And they never explain this, but they need to tell us how Doctor Strange was able to get his body back, because him just showing up all of a sudden in his real body makes absolutely no sense. But needless to say, he's there to talk to Peter. And Peter says, why? Aren't you tired of telling me the same thing over and over? Doctor Strange tells him, I should not be here, as there are other world-ending problems I need to attend to. But I have to tell you about the Blight now. And Peter says, pass, unsubscribe. I guess he thinks he's on YouTube. But needless to say, Strange lifts him up in the air and says, whether you like it or not, you will hear what I have to say about the Blight. Now, in the midst of him telling Peter about this, don't forget about this fool who ended up going to fight the Blight, because he's sitting in his chamber right now seeing something has changed after leaving the protection of the casket. And challenging Father's Ed, I feel so... what? No. What is this affliction? And you can see the Blight is still on him. And even his dogs are reacting to this. And in the midst of this crazy transformation, he says, now I understand. Power, my hopes, my dreams, and petty desires. Such a waste of time. Yes, this is true strength. There is so much to be done, so much to claim. Come, my hounds, we have work to do. And at the same time, Strange is telling Peter, when I first encountered the Blight, it nearly destroyed me. I was younger then. The secrets of the universe were revealed to me, and I was filled with wonder and awe, but was still not ready for the cosmic energy known as the Blight. I studied it because that is who I am. But the more I learned, the more I realized that it was a threat to the earth and everything I hold dear. I tried to destroy it, but it was a wasted effort. The Blight is eternal. It is a force of nature, as inexorable as solar flares or death. It exists to extinguish life. If it were to perceive humanity, it would be our end. I searched for a way to destroy the Blight through this reality and others. You cannot even begin to imagine. There was only one option, the spell for the casket. I rejected that solution at first, but eventually I did the unthinkable. I made the bargain with Cyttorak that resulted in the covenant. The casket is the only thing keeping the Blight from perceiving the earth and raining misery down upon us all. The Blight seeks to prune life and does so through affliction known as soul rot, an endless torture where living things seek out the things they love the most and destroy them. Peter, there are things worse than death. Soul rot and the chaos the Blight would wreak on Earth are among them. And Peter responds, I understand what you're saying, Strange, but does it matter? We save people from that. Something as bad or worse comes anyway. And Strange says, you need to snap out of this, Peter. The X-Men are brave to take on Kratios, but they aren't the champion. You were chosen. You agreed. You were given the tools you needed. If you do not return to the field of battle, the Blight will destroy everything. They will lose. And how does Peter respond? I wish you and the X-Men all the luck in the world. Oh yeah, Peter. Wish them all the luck in the world when you're the reason the world's about to end. But then Peter says, you may as well leave too. Or stay and keep up your creepy surveillance. Makes no difference to me, Syra. And I just need to know, how long was she there? Because Peter can see her, and I mean I don't know. She's been sitting there watching him for a while. I'm just saying, was she watching while he was getting busy? But needless to say, she says, you are certainly fascinating, mortal, but you are not all that I watch now. These are times unparalleled. I watch your city, your people, and I watch my brother and those who foolishly take up your quest. And just then, Juggernaut is beating this dude to the ground saying, do you yield? And he says, I yield. You have won this day. But then an arm comes punching right through Kradios' chest. And he says, foolish brother, he may yield, but I do not. And just then, Cyrus says no. And Peter says, what's the problem? Cosmic hangnail? And she says, I watch one brother die and another suffer a worse fate. And we see Calyx and his rot dogs. They're the claim to Earth. And he says, go, show them what it means to suffer. And the X-Men jump into action, with Scott saying, Kane, go after the new guy. Everyone else, we gotta take out these whatever they are. And as Juggernaut runs over and goes to throw a punch at that weak Calyx, well, he's not so weak no more. He stops him with one hand, and he says, my father sees fit to bestow his best gifts on everyone but me, but I have something better now. And he tosses Juggernaut with one hand through a building, and we see Magic coming through a portal to see if Juggernaut's okay. And you can see from the expression on his face, he is aggravated. He says no one stops the Juggernaut. And Calyx yells, do you see this, father? And man, this might be the first emotion we see from any of the Scions, because as she cries, Cyrus says, no, Kradios can't be. He cannot die. Oh, mortal. And at that exact time, Aunt May is trying to get everyone inside the building where the feast is. And what do we see? A rot dog trying to make its entrance. And what a read. Now, I don't know about you guys, but I'm convinced Spider-Man's greatest enemy is none other than his writers. No matter how good he gets as a character or how exciting he becomes, we always have to go back to Peter taking a loss and becoming depressed. And I think I speak for all Spider-Man fans when I say we're kinda over with seeing him in the dumps. Why can't this man ever just enjoy his victories? It was great to see the X-Men step in, and I'm really curious about what kind of threat Calyx is going to be now that he has the Blight taking hold of him. Keep in mind, Spider-Man has survived 2 trials and didn't die, so I'm curious to see if he'll die 2 times with this whole fight about to happen. Alright guys, so it looks like Peter Parker is finally shaking off the funk and gearing up to throw the Spider-Man suit back on. But things aren't that simple. There's a Scion in the picture, and the question is she really on Peter Parker's side, or is she just following her own moral code? Meanwhile, another Scion is out here spreading the blight across the entire planet. Oh, and over in the X-Men corner, they're busy trying to take each other out. Now look, at this point, Cyrus gotten to the point where we all have been with Peter. She's over this whole pity party he's been having. She legit grabs him by the back of his shirt and drags him into the middle of the battlefield. And the X-Men have their hands full with these hounds. And Peter notices they're in the middle of the feast. Now, I'm gonna stop right here and just let it be known. I think if any of you guys watched my last video, you felt the same way as me when you seen these hellhounds over at the feast. We knew it was going to be a corny thing to get Peter to be Spider-Man again. And I don't know about you guys, but I'm not happy about it. So Peter sees the feast and he's like, no. And of course, Coulson's there and he says, I'm sorry, Peter, they're gone. And Peter says, Randy, Shay, Aunt May, and some poor soul who didn't even commit the crime of knowing me. This isn't how it's supposed to be. I saw their deaths, felt them. This wasn't it. And Cyra informs him, what I showed you was but a possibility. Things changed. And what changed? You refused to call us Ceterax and rejected your responsibility as champion. And Peter says, so this is my fault. It felt like nothing mattered, but it does. How could I forget that? Every death I experienced during Cyrus' trial hurt less than the grief clawing at me now. What is wrong with me? I've been having a pity party while lives are at stake. Real pathetic, Peter. And I'm just gonna stop. I have to interject again. We can see the Spider-Man suit coming on, but if you're like me, I am tired of this let me be sad and a corny excuse to be Spider-Man again. I get it. That's the moral compass of Peter Parker. But for once in our life, can we have something a little different? But Peter says, I'd rather fail than do nothing at all. The reeds. If I give you the remaining reeds of Ragador, can you bring them back, Coulson? And Coulson's like, I'm new at this. I'm sure there are ramifications for such a deal. And Peter yells, bring them back, Coulson. I don't know what Peter knows, but yelling at a new employee isn't going to change the rules and regulations. But needless to say, Coulson says, but the reeds, your last reeds. And Peter says, bring them back, preferably without the remembering how they died. And Cyrus says, champion, without the reeds, if you die again, when you die again, it will be permanent. And Peter says, that's a chance I'm willing to take. Do it, Coulson. And just like that, everyone's back alive. Spider-Man says, I'm sorry I wasn't there for you. I'm sorry I let you get hurt. Everyone okay? And Aunt May says, I think so, but what happened? And Spider-Man says, it isn't safe out here. Get inside the feast building. One crisis handled, on to the next. And if you see, the X-Men are still battling these hounds that they've been fighting since last issue. So it's not the same hounds, they just keep multiplying. And Spidey says, since you're still here, any idea how we defeat these things? And Cyrus responds, no. There is something about them that feels corrupted, dangerous in a way. I don't quite understand. Those things are controlled by Calyx, but they are not truly his. Spidey says, I already put Calyx down once. Is a rematch allowed under the Covenant? And she responds, there is something more at play. I fear we need to find Calyx and attack him directly. He is the conduit for the power I sense. And Spidey says, on it. And what do we see? Juggernaut coming out of that building that he was tossed into from the last issue. Now, just in case you didn't read the last issue, you gotta remember, this dude Calyx was a weakling. I mean, Spider-Man gave him a ass whooping. And he got infected by the blight, and with one hand, he tossed Juggernaut through a building. So this man has had a major upgrade. And Spidey's like, hey Juggy, have you seen a guy with a bad attitude and an overinflated sense of self? And Juggernaut said, he swatted me like a fly. And you think you got what it takes to stop him? And Spider-Man says, maybe with a little help from the X-Men. And Juggernaut says, that way, go, we're with you. And Spidey says, thanks, I appreciate the assist. Glad I don't have to worry about you pummeling me for once. And I kinda agree with him. I like this side of Juggernaut a lot. I don't know about you guys. But what do we see? Calyx has Scott in this Undertaker-looking chokehold, and he says, you Earthers truly don't know when to give up. And just then, Spider-Man says, yeah, those X-Men are annoying, right? But also great at handling uninvited guests. Look, I know Earth is awesome, but you need to find a new vacation spot. And honestly, this shot of Spidey and the X-Men is phenomenal. They say, I suggest Jupiter. I hear Saturn is nice this time of year. Seriously, just pick another planet, bro, because you've seriously overstayed your welcome. Scott says to Spidey, we've been giving this guy all we've got. Tell me you have something up your sleeve. And Spider-Man's response, Doctor Strange taught me a spell that I've been saving just for a moment like this. I'll hit him with it. You guys follow up with your best attacks. And Calyx says, welcome back, champion. I cannot decide if this is amusing or pathetic. And Spider-Man says to himself, the Infernal Spear of Ferical. Strange told me that it was a last-ditch effort spell, since I won't be able to cast anything else for a while after. But this seems like a everything in the kitchen sink moment. And man, look at that blast. Strange told me that spell would decimate anyone, even a Scion. And this man Calyx came out, dusting his shoulders off, no scratches, unfazed, saying, you haven't been paying attention. Scions are your superiors. And the Blight makes me their superior in every way. And while the X-Men are all doing their best to attack Calyx, Spidey and Juggernaut are having a conversation. Spidey says, okay, so that could have gone better. Juggy, what's wrong? And Juggernaut says, this energy, it's foul. Feels like, watch out. And Calyx says, futile, all of it. And again, more of these hellhounds are everywhere. And even Juggernaut says, where do these damn dogs keep coming from? And Calyx, with this demonic eye, says, this fight is over. You all just don't know it yet, but you will. Your city, it is already mine. And you can see these dogs are everywhere. And Calyx says, it is time I left for more promising ventures. Boom, all the dogs explode. And I think everyone's shocked. Spidey says, he just exploded his dogs. Who does that? And Juggernaut says, I don't think he's much of an animal lover. And Calyx responds, good luck. Perhaps I will return once I've claimed my father's domain, if anything remains of your planet. Just then, Scott says, hey Marco, catch, and blast him right in the face. Spider-Man says, whoa, friendly fire. And Syra says, no. Juggernaut goes in for the attack, and Syra grabs Spidey, and she says, we need to get out of here. Spider-Man responds, hey, what gives? Where are we? And she says, a place between your world and mine. We cannot help your friends like this. And he says, what do you mean? And she says, your friends, they now belong to the Blight. And it's like this all over the city. People have begun to destroy that which they hold dear. Soul rot, I have heard it called, the Blight signature. The fabric of your world is unraveling. Calyx has poisoned it. And you can see the mayhem going on in the background. She continues, we must stop him. And to do that, we go to the Crimson Cosmos before Calyx can absorb the remaining Scions, as he did Gradios. Nothing matters now but stopping Calyx from gaining more power. And as Spider-Man sits there and thinks about how Doctor Strange warned him about Soul Rot, he asks Syra, why do you suddenly care about Earth? Shouldn't you be, I don't know, celebrating? And she responds, there is something worthwhile here. There is still so much I don't understand about humans, but I want to. And Spidey says to himself, I need her help. I couldn't stop Calyx even with the X-Men. And it seems like he is the key to stopping this. Maybe a little good mojo is exactly what I need. What about Juggernaut? And she says, he is unaffected because he is my father's presence here on Earth. He may yet live. Besides, if we fail, existence as we know it will end. So his suffering will be short. And as they go through a portal, Spidey says, whoa, this looks like a war zone. And Cyrus says, no, Cyrios, sister. Even Spider-Man had to say, Syra, I'm so sorry. And Cyrus says, all of them, all of my family, dead. Calyx did this. My brother did this. And you can see her whole family is dead on the floor. And she says, Father, how could you let this? Why does my father not fight back? He is a warrior. This is his domain. And then she says, if my father will not fight, I will. And hold the phone. Listen, I'm signing out. No calls. Leave me alone. Battle armor is ready. And how did they make a hot Scion look even hotter? Oh my. She tells Spider-Man, see if you can rouse my father while I find Calyx. Brother, where do you hide? I came to stop you. I crack. What is happening? And just as Spider-Man is hitting Ceterax and saying, hey, can you hear me? We really need you to wake up and knock some sense into your kid. A portal opens right above Ceterax. And what comes through? Spidey says, I've been afraid before, but the terror I feel right now makes every other moment pale in comparison. This is the Blight that Strange feared. How can we fight something so massive, so powerful? And Calyx out of nowhere grabs Peter by the back of his neck. You don't. Know this with your last breath. My triumph will be complete. Snap. He really just snapped his neck and tossed him to the ground like a piece of trash. And Cyrus sitting there surprised and shocked. And Coulson says, you did your best, kid. Time to go. All right, now look. I don't think anyone was shocked about Peter biting the dust again. I mean, at this point, it's kind of his thing. But Calyx, this dude is out here on a rampage, spreading a blight like it's going out of style. Meanwhile, the X-Men are tearing each other apart in an all-out war. And somehow, in the middle of all this chaos, Spider-Man has been resurrected as a Juggernaut. Now, your man Juggernaut, he's still out here fighting Temper, Magic, Kid Omega, Psylocke, and Cyclops. Now, Cyclops is like, look, Juggernaut, we get it, you're immune to the blight, which leaves you with two choices. Join us anyway, which involves you killing, punishing, or helping us get anyone who isn't one of us, or stand aside. And then he says, wait, I lied. There's a third choice, die. And Juggernaut's not hearing any of that. He goes, how about none of the above? I'm the Juggernaut, Summers. I make the threats. I don't feel them. And I don't know what Temper was thinking, but she definitely thought she was cooking with this plan of hers. She melted the road and froze it back up and really thought, yeah, got his ass. She must have forgot this dude runs through buildings like they're made of cardboard. She really thought turning the road into an ice rink was gonna stop him. That's like trying to trip up Derrick Henry with a Twizzler. Then, Magic really thought she was about to have her Avengers moment. She came flying with her sword like, this is it, the final blow. Only for Juggernaut to hit her with the nah little bro special. Man caught her mid-ear like a dad snatching a remote from a kid, clapped her like a mosquito, and then full-on WWE slammed her to the pavement. I just know the ground was like, damn, what did I do? Kid Omega's up next, and he's like, please, you're a crook? Yawn. I was a mutant terrorist in high school. I don't know if that's something good to brag about, but needless to say, he stopped the Juggernaut temporarily. Scott says, team, his helmet protects his only vulnerable spot, his mind. Remove it. Kid Omega yanks Juggernaut's mask off, thinking he's about to expose him, and then, bam, there's a second mask. It's like that time Sting pulled his mask off in the ring, only to reveal, wait for it, another mask underneath. Like, bro, what are you doing? Is Juggernaut really out here playing a whole game with the X-Men right now? And Psylocke says, this is as close as my psychic knives need, as she plunges into his face. And as he's in astral form, he says, I asked for this. Hanging out with the heroes is making me soft. Did she shut my brain down? Is this a coma? Where the hell am I? And as he appears in front of Ceterax, he says, oh great, is it too late to pick the coma? Yeah, I know that look. You're disappointed in me, right? Let me guess why. You made me your avatar for one reason, to strike fear of the great and powerful Ceterac into everyone I met. But lately, I keep playing hero, which ain't in the job description. So when I do good things, I get weaker, and no one's scared of you, which makes you mad. That all on track? Your genius idea is I should kill the X-Men, show how tough I am, show your old enemy, the Blight, you mean business? Otherwise what? You take my power away? Or ramp it way down again? Well, you got a point. If I ain't the Juggernaut, I ain't much. So I say, up yours. This whole mess is your fault. Ain't it your job to keep the Blight in check? What's your way ever accomplished? Your avatar should be unstoppable. But I got my butt whooped on the regular by folks like the X-Men. Cause they had friends. And I was like you, big, stupid, and pointless. And you can see this dude is still just mean mugging him the whole time. Juggernaut says, you know, the only time anything I did mattered, when I had friends. So I ain't about to kill him on your say-so. Not when it seems like you're the reason we're all here. Now either send me back and let me handle things my way, or get off your fat red behind and clean up your own damn mess. And this man just booger flicked him back into reality. And he broke right out of those restraints. Sent Kid Omega flying, and while that was going on, hit this man mid-air with a thunderclap. Then Temper thought she was doing something. He done broke the ice she was sliding on, headbutted her, and you can see she's just chilling on the ground right now. Cyclops is like, you made your choice, Marco. I won't hold back. And the Juggernaut didn't hold back either. He said good, cause I know it's a little cliche, and I know I say it a lot, but today is extra true. Nothing stops the Juggernaut. And he uppercutted Scott so hard it looks like his eye blast bent. At this point, Juggernaut homes base to talk to Beast and Magneto. And he says, hey, I need you guys to research something called the Blight for me. It's magic not from this dimension, infects people and rots their soul by turning them against their loved ones. I'm interested in how to cure someone who's got it. Beast says, we'll get right on it. How many of our teammates are infected? And he responds, all of them. And Magneto asks, may we rest assured you are immune? And Juggernaut says, yeah, I'm good. The protection is Ceterax, all I need. Ain't nothing getting past me right now. Juggernaut out. And just then, guess who woke up? Magic comes crashing down saying, you're right about the protection of Ceterac. Let's take that away. And then she says, fascinating. Either you should be powerless or in such agony you can't move, but you resist. And he says, cause I'm the... And she shoves the sword even deeper and says, quiet. And as the number games are starting to catch up to Juggernaut, he's having a conversation with Ceterac. And he says, can you hear me? I'm not giving up. Give me whatever power you can, or don't. I'll keep fighting, but I won't kill them. You might see enemies here, All I see are people who didn't give up on me when they had every reason to. So I'll be damned if I give up on them. You want to take my powers away? Go ahead. I'll go down as Cain Marco. I'll go down fighting for my friends. And you can see the look on Ceterak's face. And as Juggernaut's still fighting the X-Men, and he is still fighting, I mean, he is going toe-to-toe with him. There's still some other situations going on we need to talk about. In case you forgot, Calyx is still in the main chamber right now. And he's saying, you're a fickle one, sister. You hate father, but when I finally rebuke him, you take up arms against me? I have broken Ceterak's ill-conceived covenant, freed you, yet your eyes carry only contempt. I don't know whether to kill you or marry you. And I don't know what in the incest they was thinking when they was writing that, but that is weird as hell, guys. But his sister says this is going on too far. Calyx, the Blight was never meant to find this realm. And his response? The Blight is power we were denied, so that we would remain cowed in his shadow. He was afraid of what I could do with this. No more. I will speak to Father directly, and with extreme vigor. You have until I kill him to join me. After that, I cannot vouch for your safety. And she says he is right about one thing. I am fickle, unknown even to myself. And Coulson chimes in and says, not to be rude, but it's a little too late to discover your capacity to care about people. Kyra, scion of Ceterak, late for Spider-Man at least. So if you'll excuse me, I have to get to work. Thanks to your brother, I am about to be very, very busy. Kyra responds, Honored Avatar of Death, I know that you must carry on with your grim work, but this is all wrong. And while they're chatting, this man Calyx is over here destroying his father. And while this is going on, all the humans on Earth are all trying to destroy each other. It is straight mayhem. And you can see, there's a family over here attacking this little boy. And then a light hits them, and they snap right out of it. Guy's like, what? Oh God, honey, why? Why did I want to hurt our son? And she's like, oh baby. And a voice says, trivial. Temporary victories are all that remain here. And who do we see? Doctor Strange and Doctor Doom. Now I just want you to keep in mind that Doom is blasting people with one hand. And there's a reason I'm saying to keep that in mind. But anyway, he's like, this is folly, Strange. And Strange responds, it's not too late, Victor. Go to the Ceterak and convince him to restore the casket. Halt the Blight in its tracks. And Doom says, you know we are beyond that. You should have let me wipe this city from the earth when the Scions were vulnerable. Like, bro, mass destruction is your answer for this. And Doctor Strange is pissed. He said, you should have accepted the covenant yourself. You damned this planet, this universe, because you were unwilling to suffer. Doom's like, watch your tongue. And Strange starts yelling. You were the Sorcerer Supreme when the Blight came to this realm. Failure is yours alone. And that single beam turned to a double real quick as he sent Doctor Strange flying. And he said, do not question your better, Strange. And Coulson at that point says, until very recently, your world proceeded as expected. Ceterak sat on his throne immovable. Your brother lusted for power he'd never have. The Covenant, game or not, began as it had many times before. And you didn't care about any of it until you did. Kyra says, until Spider-Man endured the deaths I showed him. And Coulson says, wrong. You're so close, Kyra. Not the deaths. And she's finished. The lives. Coulson says, you and your father are essentially immortal. From that detached point of view, it's easy to believe that nothing matters until one day an insignificant player enters the game and your perspective shifts. Your eyes fall from the endless horizon and land squarely in the now. What's happening now? Ceterak is not immovable. He's paralyzed by loss. And Kyra says, but he can't feel loss unless, and Coulson interrupts. Atta girl, I knew you'd get there. Can't feel loss unless you have felt love. Love for a friend, love for a parent, love for a hero. Who knows that each of these tiny lights that illuminate the infinite dark of the cosmos for even a single heartbeat is fragile and unique and beautiful. So it deserves to be protected. That's what your father is feeling, what you are feeling, Kyra. Love for life is the only meaning that can be found in a meaningless universe. The weight of it is unbearable to some. To others, and she interrupts, to him. And Coulson interrupts. Spider-Man's dead, Kyra. And then she does what we've been saying she was gonna do for the last 4 issues. She says, I would strike a bargain. And he says, death can't bargain. And Kyra says, but it can be staved off with reeds of magic, with a trade, the power and immortality of a scion of Setarak, to restore one indomitable human spirit. Coulson said, Strange's use of the reeds was unorthodox, but there was a precedence for the pact with Ragador. It was basically a giant FU from one god to another. But this? And she says, can you do it? And you can see his eyes. He says, can you? This is not a simple trade. This is a sacrifice. She takes one last look at her father and then says, do it if it can be done, Reaper, before the last daughter of Setarak is made a coward. And Coulson says, okay, this might sting. And you can see her life force is draining out of her into Peter. And they have like an astral conversation where he says, Kyra, what happened? What did you do? And she responds, I learned to care because of you. And Peter says, I don't know what to say. Thank you doesn't seem big enough. And she responds, it isn't. So don't say anything. Instead, simply become. Become what must to defend that which you love so dearly against my family's folly. Become a weapon and shed that role of a pawn. Become strength incarnate. Become unstoppable. And you can tell Calyx realized it too late, just as she finished saying, become Juggernaut. All right, now look, I'm not even gonna waste anyone's time. This is what we've been waiting for. Spider-Man is a Juggernaut. Dr. Doom is all types of confused. And the Thuggernauts are wreaking havoc. And I was gonna say Smash Bros, but we don't need Nintendo suing us. And seriously, what the hell did Setarak just do? Welcome back to Keepin' It Comic. Today, we're wrapping up the 8 deaths of Spider-Man. Now, if you guys remember how that last issue ended, Spider-Man was mid-throwing a punch as he became the Juggernaut. And that's exactly where this picks up. You can see he's throwing a mean hook right at Calyx. And he's having a conversation with himself. He says, ever since a spider bite changed the course of my life, I've understood what it's like to feel strong. But I've never felt unstoppable. It's intoxicating. It's also a lie. Lots of things can stop the Spider-Naut. And you can see this man done punched him through Earth's atmosphere, which is bananas. But Peter's still having that conversation with himself. And he continues, the pain of loss, the feeling that life is meaningless. And you can see something's going on with the blight. People are actually getting cured. But what exactly is going on here? And even Dr. Doom has to ask Dr. Strange, what has he done? And Dr. Strange is so confused, he looks like when you wake up at 3 in the morning and your phone is too bright. I mean, this man has no clue what's going on here. And Calyx is looking like he's having a bad symbiote issue. And he's just like, Kyra, how? And Spider-Man's over here helping Juggernaut up. He says, hey, Juggy, thanks for holding down the fort. The good guy look suits you. And Juggernaut's like, just a guy, Webbs, trying to do better. For the record, you look ridiculous. And Spider says, but I feel great. How's the team? And Juggernaut says, better. You knocked the rot right out of them with that entrance. So there's your answer, everyone. When Spider-Man entered and crashed into Earth, he actually started curing the blight, which is crazy. Magic says, Kane, I hurt you. And he says, barely a scratch. Don't feel bad, Magic. And she goes, I don't. Just wanted it noted I got a good shot. Corrupted or not, it counts. Looking good, Spider-Naut. And for the record, I just want to say I was calling him Spider-Naut already from the last issue, so Marvel owes me a check for that. But then Jug says, she's fine. Not right in the head, but she's fine. And Spidey has to remind them they're not done. He says it's all for nothing if we don't give the son of your boss a severe attitude adjustment. And here goes Calyx mid-ear, giving the I'm perfect Cell, and these are my Cell Junior pose. And Juggernaut says, no one's the boss of the Juggernaut. Spidey goes, for the first time, I understand why you feel that way, like on a cellular level. And Jug responds, yeah, it rocks. You ever heard of the fastball special? It's an X-Men thing. And Juggernaut proceeds to pick up Spider-Naut and legit throws him at Calyx. And Spidey yells, Calyx! And just like that, you can see the full X-Men team is back in the fight. You got Temper over here fighting Calyx right now. And Spidey and Juggernaut are having a convo. Spidey says, he's scared. Throw me again. And Jug says, no, you kicked the soul rot right out of everyone's webs. Now, we got a chance. But only if you let us handle the light work. Spider-Man says, Calyx is anything but. If he unleashes more of the rot? And Jug says, I'm slow, not stupid. I know what he can do. My man said, listen, I was on the medium bus, not the short bus. Don't insult me, Spidey. But Juggernaut tells him, your fight is up there. And Spider-Man looks up and says, the Blight. It's God. It's so big, And Juggernaut says, word of advice? You're a damn Juggernaut. Don't think, just do. Always work for me, more or less. And at that moment, Spider-Man's inner thoughts kick in. And he says, the Juggernaut's footfalls are all I hear for a second. Matching my heartbeat, the world slows. And I realize the big lug is right. I've done enough thinking. I know what the solution is. Nothing else matters. This life was good. Once more, from the chest. And he squats down, conjures up some magic, and leaps while yelling, terrible trebuchet of Theragoth. And Spider-Man says to himself, I'm not gonna miss magic at all, but I love the stupid names of the spells. And it looks like he leaped right through the Blight's hand and possibly its eye. But back on Earth, Doctor Strange says he knows that striking the Blight is only a temporary reprieve. Without Ceteract himself, the only way to recast the casket would be, my God, is that why you chose Spider-Man? Did you plan for this? And we go to the Crimson Cosmos, where we see Kyra. And I just want to explain something for people who did not understand the sacrifice she made. Yes, she is still alive. What she sacrificed was all the rest of her immortality. So she is immortal now, okay? Which means she can now die. So this is why she's still alive. She did not sacrifice her whole life, just her immortality. Kyra says, it's quiet. If it was not so terrible, it would be nice. But we must scare the quiet away with the truth, Father. I have traded my immortality, my share of your crimson magics, to spare the life of the mortal champion so that he can save the Earth realm, including you. Ceteract says, why? Why am I immobilized, indecisive, confused? And she responds, I have been asking myself that very question since I met this curious human. The unthinkable has happened. You lost 6 of your children, their immortality, their essence, stripped away by the Blight in the form of Calyx. Humans call it grief. And boy, did her father lash out. He screamed, nothing can hurt Ceteract. And she gave it right back and said no. The great Ceteract did nothing as his son killed his siblings and attacked his father. You were broken. And he said, make it stop. And she responded, I cannot. The pain is inevitable, but maybe there is one who can help if it is not too late. And as Spider-Man is still fighting a Blight, he's still having a conversation with himself because, man, this thing is a massive beast. He says, horrifying as it is, the Blight is a force of nature. It exists to cull souls from existence. Why? Might as well ask why is there gravity or muons or quasars. It doesn't matter. Doctor Strange figured out a way to hide our entire dimension from this thing, but it took the power of a god. I'm a kid from Queens who got a crash course in magic last week, but with a slice of power I got from a god's daughter, I think I can make it work. I can cast the casket of Ceteract continuously until I die. And someone says, failure is inevitable. And who is it? Ceteract himself. And he says, maybe not today. With the power of my blood coursing through you, you can live for hundreds of years. But the Blight is part of the primal fabric of the universe. It will prevail, eventually. And Spidey still being Spidey to the end. He says, I know, Mr. Ceteract, your honor, or whatever. But I'm casting a spell anyway. So if you're not part of the solution, and Ceteract says, the Blight will prevail. Why do you fight? Why win when life is so fragile? And Spidey says, despite the magical craziness of the last few days, this is the only life I have. Most of the time, it's hard and it's not fair. Sometimes it flat out sucks, but it's my life. There's not another one like it anywhere. It's beautiful exactly because it's so fragile. Every life is like that. Even if in 1,000 years my life and anything I ever did won't matter, it matters today. Today is worth fighting for. With a view of the horizon of affinity, I don't expect you to understand Setarat. And I don't care. I'm alive, I'm fighting. Just like everyone, and Setarat shoves Spidey. And he says, I hurt. And I see no end to that pain. But if you can act in the face of loss, of your insignificance and fragility, so can Setarat. I will become the crimson casket that shields this world, this dimension, from the horror of the blight. I will protect the remaining children, flawed as they are, and this world. This is the new covenant, not forged on a whim, not even forged by my own will. I make this pledge because I grieve, and I fear that without action, grief is all that will remain. On this day, Doom Sorcerer Supreme taught a god what it means to live, and forged the barrier that would forever shield our universe from the blight. And just then, Doctor Strange pulls Spidey through a portal back to Earth. Instantly, Spidey's like, Calyx? Thanks, all of you. And Jug's like, told ya, doing what you want works every time. I'll see this idiot home. He won't be back. And of course, typical Cyclops. What's a little Armageddon between friends? Like, what? I've lost friends playing Uno. But at this point, Peter's on the ground talking to Doctor Strange and he goes, I never want to do magic ever again. Not even at a kid's party. Never. And Doctor Strange is just like, fair enough. But Peter still has some cleaning up to do. First thing of business, he goes and apologizes to Aunt May. I mean, this guy's been a mess this whole series. After that, he goes over and apologizes to Felicia. I mean, I don't know what he's really apologizing from. Who can apologize for sleeping with Felicia? I mean, it's Felicia. But she's just like, hey, keep emo Peter at bay. No one likes emo Peter. And don't get me started on dancing emo Peter. And if she's talking about the Peter that we seen in Spider-Man 3, I think I agree with her. No one wants to see that ever again. And in the midst of all this going on, it looks like Kyra has imprisoned Calyx for all the stupid stuff he decided to do this whole series. And we get to see Peter and Randy having a talk. They finally got to put together that showcasing that they were talking about earlier. And we got to see some amazing past shots of Spidey in different series, and it looks pretty cool. And it looks like only friends and family came. But after what Spidey's been through, I mean, I think he's okay with that. And then someone says Peter. And who is it? None other than Shay. She says, hey, I just wanted to show my face and whatever. And he goes, I'm glad you did, so I can apologize in person. I was in a bad place, and that's no excuse for how I behaved. But I wanted you to know I got to the other side. Well, what you said about pain versus suffering helped a lot. Life on life's term. And if maybe life decides that I can call you and try again. And she says, well, I have been thinking about it. And like that might be the first time Peter actually ends with the girl. What did you guys think? I still have a lot of questions. I need to know why there was one issue where we seen Doctor Strange in his regular body and the rest of him, he was back in astral form. Does this man have his body back or not? Because that confused the hell out of me. And this is crazy that Setarat sacrificed himself so that way he can take Spider-Man's place in protecting the universe. Like, was this Dr. Doom's foresight this whole time? Or was this a win-win for Dr. Doom because we know him? He probably didn't care whether it was Spider-Man or Setarat. He knew one of them was going to take this place. And even though this ending was way different than I predicted, I'm still a little disappointed. I wanted to see those other 3 trials. I thought it was very cool that each one had a different ability or a different trial they were bringing to the table. And I still want to know what those other 3 trials were going to be. What did you guys think of this whole series as a total? Let me know your thoughts in the comments below. Don't forget to like this video. It really helps with the YouTube algorithm. And make sure to subscribe and hit the notification bell so you never miss out on future content. Join our Patreon and follow our social media. Links are in the description. And until next time, thanks for kicking it with Keeping It Calm.